Hello, family members. I hope you're doing well. I am not. I am very frustrated and worked up, and I've got to talk about it. Just got to. J.K. Rowling has come for the asexual community, and that, in some ways, kind of comes out of nowhere, but in some ways, you see it coming. It really is a slippery slope. You can't hate one part of the queer community without eventually hating more and more of it. I just don't know why she would do it. I don't know why she would post a anti-asexual message, aphobic message. I just don't see why she thinks this benefits her in any way. And it's just upsetting to me because I know that it's going to be hurtful to a lot of people who are very vulnerable. A lot of us were extremely hurt when we found out that she was anti-trans, transphobe, TERF, whatever you want to call her. And, because it was the stories that she created gave us a place to make a community. And it was really the community that I loved the most. It wasn't the books. It was the community and that sort of imaginative framework that allowed for like fan fiction and cosplay and fan art and, all this paratextual stuff that was really fun. It was like a movement of sorts in a way. And she took that from us, She tainted it. When you see somebody who has Harry Potter paraphernalia now, you question whether or not they're transphobic, because it's a heck of a lot easier to overlook or not care about what JK is doing to the community if you also agree with her, right? So a lot of us have already felt that hurt, We've had to process the fact that somebody who we thought was a kind and good person who inspired us was honestly just a regular human being who had rich person's disease, I mean, that's what it really boils down to with her and her hatred, is that she showed a little bit of bigotry, just a hint of it. And her rich person's disease allowed that to be nurtured so completely. There are so many loud voices in her ear telling her that she's doing great and she's saving women, and all the people who think that she is wrong or stupid for whatever reason. She fell right into an echo chamber that has led her down this pipeline where it started out where she was questioning if trans people were oppressed, and now it's virulently anti-trans, like almost to the point of advocating violence in some instances. I mean, she certainly is supportive of people who do advocate violence, if that means anything to anyone. But denying Nazi war crimes, being like, no, the Nazis didn't oppress the trans community. Yeah, that were like the first victims. Like, What are you talking about? But, she's so deep in this like hole and so out of touch with reality. But people who understood that, could see it, we've had our time to cope. And there are a lot of people out there that, most unfortunately, either decided that they could separate the art from the artist, or didn't care enough about the trans community to distance themselves from Harry Potter. Maybe they felt like it was too important to them personally, or maybe they just were so indifferent it didn't matter to them one way or the other. And some of those people are asexual, and someone that they still care about just stabbed them in the back for no reason at all. Just flippantly. Just because she could. What does she care? If somebody who is part of the asexual community says, hey, we need a community, it helps, why would you question that? Surely she is as aware of as I am of how utterly obsessed with sex our culture is. And being asexual in a culture like that is challenging. Literally, there are people who think that it is a mental illness. We're exactly where gay people were last century. Okay? People think we need to be fixed. Oftentimes there's things like corrective rape that'll happen. It's not good. And medical professionals do not know how to handle you when you're in the ACE community. If you try to talk to your therapist, the odds are they won't know necessarily the terminology that you would use for yourself. Like, yeah, we are isolated, and we're allowed to band together and support each other and say, hey, we want people to know that we're here and we exist, so that other people who are like us can find us. Okay? That is one of the most important things to me in the entire world. That's one of the things that has been the core tenet of my YouTube channel and on my internet presence for like last 8 years or something. Every time I talk about one of my labels in, the appropriate community. So if I'm in a asexual community space, I might be talking about being aegosexual, and there'll be people who are like, there's a word for it. If I'm talking in this like regular queer spaces and I talk about aromanticism, there'll be people like, there's a word for it. I cannot tell you how good it feels to find other people who feel the same way you do and understand how your brain works. And you don't feel so broken and alone anymore. Why does she not want us to have that? What does it do to her? Why does she need to like laugh at us? It is not about sex. Asexuality is not about sex. Like, literally, by definition, is not about sex. And the first thing she does is make it about sex. Because that's the only thing she can think of. She doesn't understand what it's like to not be straight and not be allosexual and alloromantic and how isolating it can feel. It just upsets me so much to think that she's out there just indiscriminately throwing shots at anybody who's queer and has a micro label. We're all vulnerable. Like, they want to erase us. I made a series discussing some different micro labels that I was more familiar with. I kind of petered out once some of the micro labels I wasn't as familiar with, and I didn't feel comfortable trying to explain them, I called it the mythicals because we're just supposed to not exist. People keep telling us we don't exist and that we haven't existed throughout time. That's so bizarre. I had family members, my elders in my own family that never got married, I mean, you hear about a lot of people who have a family member or an elder somewhere in their history. They have people who weren't married that were special, important members of their family. It was like their dad's favorite brother, and they did everything together, and they built places, or it was your aunt's sister-in-law, and they were best friends, and they went thrift shopping all the time, or whatever. I have a cousin that is an unmarried woman who is one of the best aunties I know of. She's always been very close with her nieces and nephews, and she might not have the time and energy to be that presence in their life if she was married and she did have her own family, or her own, kids or husband or whatever it is that she would want, like, unmarried people are part of culture, have always been part of culture, and yet we are so easily erased because there's just this assumption that everybody wants to be married, and if they're not, that there's something wrong with them, and that's keeping them from being married. And I'm just telling you right now, there's nothing wrong with them. They just don't want to get married. They're aromantic and or asexual. Okay? Like, and that doesn't hurt anyone. In fact, it is helpful to the community. I think that being asexual, being aromantic, and all the little queer micro labels, that is an evolutionarily designed, if you have faith, God designed actual intentional part of what makes our society work. It is good to have heterosexual, allosexual people who get married and have kids. That's not a bad thing at all. But there's also room and need in our society for all different kinds of people who can expend their energies in all different kinds of ways. Not everybody needs to expend their energy, their life, on raising kids. That is just not something that is beneficial to society. And sometimes that frees them up to be able to support kids in other ways. And sometimes they don't have any involvement with kids in their lives. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with us. But they're coming for us. And that's something that, I've been sounding the alarm, and a lot of people have been sounding the alarm for a while. They started with trans people. They will never stop there. And it does not surprise me that we're next, because we're extremely easy to dismiss and oppress. And like, they're just like, oh, you just don't want to get laid. Oh, you just can't get laid. Oh, there's something wrong with you. Oh, your libido's too. We are way more complicated than that. It frustrates me when I see people who try to include asexuals in queer spaces, and the way they describe asexual is no sex. And that's just not how it works. It's no sexual attraction. It's like, okay, are you attracted to men? No. Are you attracted to women? No. You're attracted to non-binary people? No. You're asexual. But just because you're not attracted to someone doesn't mean that you might not fall in love with them. You may not be aromantic just because you're asexual. And if your partner is not asexual and you don't care one way or the other about sex, you might just, have a nice time with your partner because it's what they want. So it's quite possible for a person who is asexual to have way more sex than, some people who aren't asexual. The amount of sex you have has nothing to do necessarily with asexuality, okay? It just has to do with who you're attracted to. And in that scenario, I'm talking about somebody who's asexual but lives a fairly traditional life. But most of us don't. A lot of asexuals either, don't have kids, don't get married, just don't live the nuclear family life. I know of people who, like, their grandpa's brother lived with the family until he died. He was part of their household as probably an aro-ace man, and obviously it had an important role in the family. He was remembered very fondly. Like, we do that. My living situation is complicated. My parents stay with me in the winters because they're snowbirds and they don't want to be up there in the West Virginia weather in December. And in the summertime, I have my goddaughter here with me. And then a lot of time I'm alone. And anytime anyone asks me for my living situation, it's always a discussion like that. They're like, do you live alone? And I'm like, well, I mean, sometimes I am very rarely alone. When my mom and dad are here, when my goddaughter are here, I am not. But sometimes I go weeks and not seeing anyone. I'm too complicated for a yes or no answer there. My life is too complicated because I'm not straight or gay or bi, I suppose. I am an aromantic woman, and that complicates my life. Being part of the asexual community, it complicates my life. It's just, like I said, in medical settings, it gets very frustrating because there's a lot of assumptions that are made about you as, especially in my case, like a middle-aged woman, Oh my gosh, it's a fight every time that I would have some sort of procedure and they'd be like, we need to do a pregnancy test. And I'm like, no, you don't. Yes, we do. It's standard. I'm like, no, you don't. You really don't. There's no way, literally no way it's been years. And they're like, okay. And I had to fucking sign a form. Like, I shouldn't have to fight. If I'm like, hey, I'm asexual, I haven't had sex in years, I don't need a pregnancy test, they should be like, okay, and that's that. But that can't happen because they don't even know what that term means. So I always have to have the conversation. And I don't think people like J.K. Rowling understand how that wears at you after a while. It is not easy to constantly have to explain yourself, to constantly have to define what it is you even are. You know, it's when you're in corporate landscape, they do lots of like icebreaker kind of things where you talk to your coworkers, because they're always changing your teams around, because that's how corporate structure works, you know. And they would be like, oh, what's your family like? You know, everyone would go around and they'd tell about their kids and their husband and their daughter and their son and their wife and their, you know, whatever. And it comes to me and I'm like, what do I do? Either I'm like, oh, I'm just single. And then they start making assumptions about me and thinking that maybe there's something wrong with me. Or I own who I am, and I explain that I'm aromantic, and it makes everything awkward. To asking just for the little bit of acknowledgement of who I am can completely kill the vibe in a room. It's happened to me before. And people just honestly a lot of times don't even know what to say to that, and they just like ignore it and move on. They don't even know how to react to somebody being like, I'm aromantic and so I don't ever want to have a relationship, and I live alone and have dogs and cats and I'm happy. that just blows people's minds. They don't know what to do. Because society wants to pretend that people like me don't exist. Like J.K. Rowling wants to pretend like people like me are trying to like make things up to get attention. And you know what? She's right. I do want to bring attention to the terms that we have determined as a community to use, like asexuality, aromanticism, aspec, all of that. I want to bring attention to something that we have recently defined. And if you want to say recently defined is the same as made up, fine. But that is true. That is what I want to do. She's not entirely wrong. But she is being aphobic, anti-asexual in her actions and proving herself wrong at the same time. It's so interesting to be able to do so much at once there. To actually say something that's on some level profound and true, and also entirely wrong, and also proves herself wrong. I mean, she's the like Comme des Garçons of Twitter or something. If you get that reference, I love you. Anyway, it's funny, but it's not funny because it is dangerous. You know? There's no legal protection against conversion therapy for asexuals and aromantics. Nothing. And in fact, a lot of people probably think that it's needed or necessary or wanted. So, we are very, very vulnerable. And there's some maybe young asexual kid out there who is bawling their heart out right now. because they didn't understand that they would be next. They didn't see this coming. They don't like us. J.D. Vance has very explicitly said that. You know, we are as dangerous to them as any other part of the queer community because we are a challenge to the idea that their way of life is the only and best way to live. And anyone who challenges that is dangerous to them. And so they become dangerous to us. Because they see us as an enemy. They see us as people who are out there defying them and inviting their attention. The thing is, I don't want their attention. I want the general public's attention. I want people who are potentially aspec themselves and people who are not asexual or aromantic but could be supporters or allies. That's who I want to speak to. If J.K. Rowling and her little friends decided to ignore my existence for the rest of eternity, that would be fine by me. I'm not trying to get her attention, and whoever posted the happy International Asexuality Day meme wasn't trying to get her attention. It wasn't about her. It was about us and our allies. But she's so fucking self-centered. She is so stuck in her worldview where she is so firmly centered that us expressing support for ourselves and other members of our own community, she had to make it about her. It just, ugh. It was very upsetting to me. And here I am. I was literally in the middle of uploading my last YouTube video when I came across the meme. And I was like, well, I'll probably make a video about that tomorrow. And I just couldn't wait until tomorrow. I had to get these thoughts out because it's too fucking much. It's exactly what we said was going to happen. We said they came for trans people. They're going to come for other queer people next. And here we are. They are doing exactly what we said. Oh, gosh, family members. You know what? I can't leave you on that note. I gotta do something for you. So, Casey Bear, look at his face. Can you see this boy? Oh my gosh, he is the happiest dog in America. Look at him. Oh, I love him. I love him so much. All right, family members, take care of yourselves and all of those around you, and I'll talk to you some other time.